Okay, so I appreciate you guys taking out some time today for this training session. I hope you get as much value from it as I intend to deliver. In any event, it's just to add another layer of your already super safe, effective operation, and I'll help you guys learn a few more dog handling skills if there's any gaps. I'm not saying that there is. In any event, it all starts with the potential of you considering that lots of times how we kind of present ourselves with the dogs in the training spaces or the daycare spaces can have a really direct influence on their behavior. And sometimes that's missed. Not everyone's as aware of hey, if I do this, this affects this dog, which then is going to affect all the rest of them. So I want to try to help potentially offer you guys another deeper lens to look through with your interactions. And the benefits of this would very simply be less dog fights, or even less than there already are, less severe, but also the dogs being a lot more polite with you. Because sometimes there is jumping up and things like that, and it's okay with this little one, but this Great Dane scratches all my body, and that's not fun, and he ripped my clothes, and no thank you, right? So if we can all kind of get on the same page as a team, your team, I think you guys could all have incredibly positive results. Now the thing is not a lot of work at all. That's the very positive benefit, is tweak, tweak, tweak. Just a little bit of a change of your behavior. It's not actually so much doing anything with the dogs, we have to set aside time to train each dog to do stuff. It's not that. It's you lead but from the front. So it's similar to I have a 9-year-old son. If I want my son to change and act differently in certain ways, guess who has to change first? Any guesses? I can't expect my 9-year-old son with his limited ability to emotionally navigate situations to just be don't feel mad right now, bro. He's just going to act that way. So, but as soon as I change, he kind of can change in kind. So I'm just going to lead in that way. So anyways, all of this, the foundation of it, if you think about it as a house, is leadership, okay? So something hey, what is leadership? Does anyone have any ideas? Who wants to go out on a limb and say, what's leadership? Anything? I'll challenge.
Make sure you're in control.
Okay, so what, I agree, but how does that look? Tangibly, how would you manifest that?
You want to lead by example.
Okay.
You want to behave in certain ways that are going to inspire everybody else to behave in similar ways.
I like it, but can you give me an example?
Confidence?
Okay, what's an example of it though? A physical manifestation of how you can convey leadership. Confidence, we know what that is and we can perceive it, but what does that look like to a dog?
Just simply the way you present yourself in the room.
Yep, for sure, how you carry yourself.
You don't want to be too tense when you walk in, and then you can cause tension with other
For sure.
things that are in the room with you, humans and animals.
Mm-hmm. So with these particular things with leadership, what I'm going to do is really define how you can exponentially increase your leadership in a way that the dog clearly understands, but also in a way that is more tangible for all of you, because right now, it's a little bit difficult to quantify what leadership is, right? I heard confidence, I heard showing you're in control, okay? But it's difficult, what does that mean physically, right? So with that leadership, what we're going to do is look at in a couple of frames, okay? So the first piece of it is I like to refer to it as prompting. Okay, you're going to by default take a little bit lesser of a status role with the dog if the dog's the one who's doing most of the do the thing human, pet me, barking, whining, scratching at the back door to get let outside, jumping on and off furniture on their own accord, bringing you a ball and you instantly throw it endlessly. It's instant gratification. They ask, you give it. If you consider, and you don't have to buy into this, but just consider that it's a possibility that it's true, is that dogs learn by trial and error. And if my dog prompts me 5, 10, 15, 20 times for affection when they want it, going outside when they want it, feeding time when they want it because they might whine or bark or nudge you, jumping on the bed and cuddling with you on their time. They might have 30 repetitions of prompting you a day, and you ask them 3 times to sit before their meal. So you're unintentionally conditioning them to like tell you like, hey, do the thing. And you're gonna say, oh, sure, because you're cute and I love you and you're so sweet and I wanna make you happy. But it's like a child too. Like once again, if I give my 9-year-old son what he wants, when he wants, as much of it as he wants, what kind of child do you think I'm gonna raise? Any guesses?
One that won't listen to you.
Probably a difficult one, right? So when I actually do need him to, clean his room or something, he has a 5-alarm meltdown because he's not accustomed to me ever telling him to do anything. So that the beauty of this is I don't have to be physical. I don't have to be large. Like not everyone's, 6'2", my size, okay? 95% of my clients are females. So I'm not being like, hey, you got to show this dog who's boss by physically doing stuff to it. It's not true. So anyways, with the prompting, that's side one, okay? It's really going to help you establish yourself as more of a leadership position. Second side of it is controlling space. So think of like 2 sides of a coin. Who's prompting who? I should be prompting the dog more than them me, or else I'm by default taking a lower status role. And controlling space. So what I mean by that is sometimes, most often, we're kind and considerate towards dogs. And there's nothing wrong with that. But sometimes it can get misconstrued. So if my dog's in the middle of the hallway or in the middle of my kitchen and I'm like doing this around them, I'm just probably giving up an opportunity to reinforce some of that leadership. Now, what I'll say is that these 2 sides of the coin with leadership aren't as relevant if your dog does what you want it to do, when you want it to, and it listens really well. But most people, when they call me into a private session, their dog is not doing well listening, and it has a bunch of behavioral problems. So take in stride and be conscious of it, is I don't have to be as mindful of all these little nuances and leadership if my dog already listens to me all the way that I want, and I can not have to be as mindful about the prompts. Because one of my dogs prompted me all the time, and I'd let him. But he listened to me when I told him to do something, right? Or it's like, hey, come off leash, or walk nice, and he's like, sure, and it was fine. So anyways, controlling space. I'll convey what that means shortly, but essentially it just means like I'm going to take more of an active role of I'm going to gently move through the dog, not ask them, but they just start to move out of the way. Kind of like if you met your boss in the hallway and you guys are walking face to face, you're probably not going to be like, and then like do like the chicken game and who's going to pass off first. You're probably going to be respectful. Oh, good morning, hi. Or you'll stop and talk to each other, but it's somewhat like that, okay? So anyways, to get on to the prompting side of things and give you a little bit of understanding and depth to that, to convey yourself more in a leadership status position, you just flip the script on the prompting is what I call it. You just turn it upside down. So it's literally no work. You're already doing all these things. You're just choosing more deliberately when you're going to offer them. So think of affection, right? I'm in the play area. The dog walks by and is like, you have me. And you're like, yeah, I do. And then the other ones all run over and try to get some too. And now you got 3 dogs on top of you trying to get all the love. It's not typically that big of a deal. It's like, oh, it's puppy party. I love all this attention. You guys are so sweet. Until you get one of the dogs that might be possessive over affection. And you're like, oh, how did things escalate so fast? Well, because they were competing over your affection because it was perceived as a resource that they could control. Because dogs will guard affection like they will items like toys and bones, unless you convey yourself in a different manner. So we can do that. It's not physical, it's simple, not necessarily easy because it goes against your natural innate, like, I want to touch you, cute dog. You can still pet the dogs tons. I'm not even saying pet them less. Just choose when you pet them. Maybe the dog's lying down doing nothing. I want to reinforce desirable behavior. Okay? Expand the good is what I call it. This dog's doing nothing. It's super chill and relaxed. Hey, I'd love to have more of that. Oh, hi, puppy. And you go and pet them calmly, okay? What you have to realize about affection is that you can energetically either make the dog have like a explosion, like a balloon, or you can help them be still and relaxed. So I try to help people be like massage-like affection, not excited affection, unless you want the dog to nose bop you. Then it's your nose, no worries to me. But if I'm like, oh my God, hi puppy, you're so cute, bop, not a fan. So when I give affection, I use it more as like, I want to like calm you and soothe you and potentially reinforce what you're doing, which is being chill. So I don't want to inject a whole bunch of energy into you, especially in a play group, right? One dog starts getting all amped up and jumping at me, and they're attracted to energy. So naturally, everyone else is going to come too. So then all of a sudden things get a little spicier than you would have expected pretty quickly. So in any event, really just change when you give affection. So reverse, the prompting with affection. As dog comes up and bugs you, you just ignore. Like, yeah, you're cute. Can't even think it. Just don't say anything. Now, what they typically do is do like a series of escalations of behavior to try to get what they want from you. This will subside if you guys hypothetically adopted some of these strategies where they won't prompt you anymore. They'll just prompt the weak link in the room of the team who always gives them the affection. So if you know all the dogs that are going towards one staff member, that's the one that gives them all the things that they want when they want it. But anyways, dog comes up to me, it's like, hi, what's up? And they're all wiggly. I'm like, oh, you're sweet. I just wait. I can wait for like 15, 30 seconds. Dog walks somewhere else and I'm like, come here, buddy. And they run over and I give them some nice calm affection. Okay? You can give the same amount, duration-wise, and the same frequency of pets. It's totally fine. But you're the ones who's choosing it, not the dog being like, pet me. Because when you're busy, let's just say you're busy petting another dog, and this other dog comes in that's used to getting that attention, and you're ignoring it because you're petting the other dog, what are they going to do? Any guesses? What do you think the dog would do that's getting ignored and wants some attention? This is not a rhetorical question.
Bug again.
Pardon?
Bug again.
Like, what would that look like?
It can look more like they're jumping on you and like
Jumping.
trying to, like,
Pawing at you.
Pawing, absolutely.
using their vocals.
Barking, yeah. Those are great examples, right? So you're doing this, and then all of a sudden, this dog comes at you, and you can't ignore it. Because now it's jumping on you, scratching you with those little raptor talons. Or barking in your ear, because you're lower, and you're like, ugh, no thank you. So I can minimize some of those undesirable behaviors by being like, no, I'll pet you when I'm ready. Hands off, sir. Okay? So that's kind of a level 1 I would ignore. Level 2 is where I'd actually tell the dog to kind of back off and go away, which I'll get into next. So I'll give you the tools of how to proactively, interrupt the dog, or proactively ignore dog's prompting, and then reactively address them if the dog is like being persistent. You're like, I can't ignore this, it hurts, because I'm not expecting you to ignore something that is literally causing you pain. And we don't have to. We can address it in a way that is not invasive or aversive towards the dog. Anyways, so be mindful of your affection. That's going to be the biggest one for you guys in this facility. Not so much like going outside, that prompting, not so much jumping on furniture prompting, not so much telling you when they want to eat prompting. That stuff's not as relevant. So really the affection's big for you, okay? The second piece of it is that body block is what it's called, controlling space. So I got a body block level 1 and a body block level 2. So very simply, body block level 1 is just where I just come into a space and I'm going to protect that leadership that I was talking about before. So we go into your facility, there's dogs everywhere. I walk in, I want to communicate that authority or status, or at least like I'm not going to do what you want on your beck and call. You got to figure out how to make these hands work. And that's going to look like I just walk in and I gently move through the dogs. Even if they're all in the way around me, I'm just going to go where I need to go, and I'm going to be stoic and quiet towards them. Not as fun, but you're going to get scratched less. And they're actually going to want to pay attention to you more. Makes no sense. But think about relationships sometimes, or someone you're interested. Sometimes it's makes a bit more sense if they're like, why aren't they interested in me? Like normally you guys kind of talk to me. This guy doesn't care. Why not? What's wrong? Hey, how's it going? Anyway, so I have that kind of presence is what I like to refer to it as. Just you come in with a presence that's noticeable to the dogs. And that's quiet, stoic, moving through them. Okay, body block level 1, when the dogs are in the way, I just gently move through them instead of around. I'm not kicking, I'm not stepping, none of that. If the dog was hypothetically like lying down in the middle of a doorway that I'm going to go through and I need to, I'm like, you're going to move, friend, not me. But I'm not even going to say anything. I just like do this. And because some dogs, once you start to do some of the body blocking, they will actually just lay down and be like, what are you going to do now? And you're like, haha, I got to move for that. So then what we do is we do that walking through them, and they'll spin in a circle and they'll roll over and they'll laugh, in dog laugh, and be silly, and then they'll get annoyed. It's maybe 15, 20 seconds, they'll get up, ugh, what's your problem? You're not hurting them, you're just being like, they're like, no, this is not a tactic that's gonna work, friend. And then they get up and you're like, go, and then they walk away. The end. I'm not physically doing anything to the dog other than putting my feet underneath and then getting irritated by it. Body block level 1, move through the dogs when they're in the way instead of around, okay? The body block level 2 is a little bit different, where essentially I'm gonna corral the dog out of a space. So let's pretend there's a watering station in your facility, you know, where all the dogs go to have a drink, and one of them standing by it, and they're like watching, and their back's facing the watering station, and they're like on guard. And you're like, no, it's not your water, bro. So I go towards that dog, and the water's behind him, and I'm gonna kind of scooch in between, like, go. And I corral the dog away with my personal space bubble. We have one, right? If I get too close to you, it gets weird. It might get weird anyways if I got close to you, but like, if I'm in your bubble, you're gonna feel a little bit of discomfort, and one of two things are gonna happen. If I keep coming, you're gonna back up and be like, you need to maintain that personal level of comfort, or you're gonna push me away, depending on how you feel about the situation and extenuating circumstances. 99% of dogs will just back away. So I'm using that body block as a little bit of a motivation of it makes me feel uncomfortable, like, go away, sir. So they just back away. It becomes the path of least resistance. If I move towards, they're like, okay, fine. I don't know why and what's going on in their head, but I know that I can reduce the frequency of an undesirable behavior when they're doing it if I body block them away from it. It's like something resonates. They're like, oh, you didn't like that? Oh, okay. And then they walk away. Great example is like barking through a window. Front window, in your home, dog's barking its face off, people are yelling from behind, hey, stop it, shut up. And then the dog doesn't stop. I'm like, get up. Don't just yell, they think you're barking with them. I don't know what they're thinking, but they might, right? They're like, my human hates you too. So I'm like, get up and walk in between them and the window. And then when you corral this way, you're like, go. And then you use your body bubble to corral them back until they're like, what? And you're like, stop it. And they're like, okay. So you can convey what you want, which is to stop barking in that circumstance, but there's no negative downside. I'm not hitting the dog. I'm not being physically rough with them. So I'm not going to do any wear and tear. But it's clear. My body language is clear in a way that they understand. I didn't like that. Back off. And they're like, oh, okay, that's clearer. So we're going to use similar tactics, in theory, you could, in your facility. So because the way they're tangibly utilized is like, I might have a dog that I know is in my personal space bubble. I won't say any names, but he might be black and white. That might, get a little sensitive in my bubble when other dogs come into it if he's in it or she. So if the dog's around me and I'm like, ooh, this dog likes to be possessive of my attention, I'm like, no, you can't be in my personal space bubble if you act that way. You lose access. So as soon as the dog gets in my bubble, I'm like, go. And then I walk towards them till they back away. And then once they stop there, I go right back to where I was. And I can physically show this with a dog, so it makes more sense. And then the dog will come back to you. And you're like, no, go. And you get them back. And then there's this imaginary line that they'll stay at. I do it in people's homes all the time in their kitchen. Because I'm like, do you guys like your dog in your kitchen? You're like, are you ever scared you're going to spill some bacon grease on their face because they're laying in the middle of the road? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, do you not want that to happen? They're like, yeah, cool. So we practice the body block level 2, right? Corralling the dog out of the kitchen. Ultimately, it's just a practice rep. I'm not even like training them to use it really in that moment, but it's for later because maybe their dog barks too much through the front window. Or maybe their dog is leash reactive on walks towards other dogs, and it's a way that they can suppress the dog's behavior without there being any wear and tear on the dog. So you can convey, no, I don't want that, and start to train different behavior. Anyways, you have any questions about all of that to begin with? Or is it kind of make sense? Or are you scared that I'm just going to give you a really, really long-winded answer? Both is probably true.
A lot of what you're saying is really in line with a lot of stuff these guys have already been working on, like your level 2 body block
Sure.
is our door control. You know, your level 1 is our path of least resistance, walking through the dogs with that type of energy. So
Yeah, that's how we walk into the rooms.
Mhm.
That's how she trained us to walk into the rooms. Is you walk in and you don't pay attention until
For sure.
they're like calm and out of your space, and you're comfortable with that kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like exactly what you were explaining. Like
For sure.
like kind of conveying that like energy that like it's your space.
Yeah.
Sort of thing.
Definitely. And there's, going to be probably some nuances that you guys will be able to tighten up, because I've seen you personally not do it in certain circumstances. So, not you, but I'm talking about someone. But that's where it's like, hey, the dog's jumping on me. What am I going to do to get it off of me? Any guesses?
You can walk towards them.
Yeah, level 2 body block.
Yeah.
Off. Till they get down. If the dog jumps up again, I might just have to if they did it 2 or 3 times and they weren't getting the message, then I'd have to do something else. But don't move backward, or they'll just chase you and jump up on you. Don't push off, because that can be reinforcing to a lot of dogs because you're still touching them. But also zip it. Say off once or twice and let your body do the talking, not your mouth. Because we just tend to elevate their energy with how we verbally communicate. No, stop it. It's enough. And then the dog gets amped up with you. So less is more with that. But just be mindful, if they're going up towards you, you're saying off and you're moving towards, so they back out of your space. So it's clear that I didn't like you're scratching me, okay? Anyways, I'm going to refer to my little trusty pad here, see if I'm missing anything. Okay, another thing to be mindful of is being mindful of positive feedback. There's nothing wrong with positive feedback, love it, but your timing is really important, okay? And what I mean by that is, for example, we just talked about, jumping up. So dog jumps up on me, because I'm ignoring it, because I'm not giving it attention when it asks for it, jumps up. I say off, I move through it, it gets down. What next? What do you do? Any guesses? Exactly, but no. That's what everybody thinks. Okay, so I appreciate the answer, because that's what everyone does typically, but I'm like, well, it's actually probably going to run the risk of you reinforcing the cycle, not the last thing. So if you reward anything and there's an undesirable behavior in it within 10 to 15 seconds, you get all of the cycle, not the last behavior. So you get jump up, get down, sit, affection, not sit, affection. So why does this dog keep jumping up? Well, because you're giving it positive feedback too early, and it thinks all of the things is part of the cycle. Because we teach cycles of behavior with dogs all the time. It's just like this one's an undesirable cycle that people don't realize they're reinforcing. Another really good example of it is, I remember in dog classes, I'd be teaching a go to your mat or something, okay? Go to your mat, dog goes over there, lays down, and then you do start to add the stay to it where you leave, okay? And people always have the same issue. They go to their mat, the dog lays down, they food reward the dog, they walk away, dog follows them and breaks position. And they're like, no, we're doing stay, go to your mat. Go to your mat, lay down, food reward, dog eats it, they walk away, break position. So the dog in that moment is thinking, go to your mat, lay down, get food, break is part 1. Come off of the mat to start the game over again. So they're unintentionally reinforcing a cycle that they're really frustrated about. But for the dog, and they're like, yeah, I can control this game and I can get more snacks way faster. If I get off the bed as soon as possible, they'll put me back on it and I get another snack. So I should jump off the bed. So I very simply, I'm like, no food for laying down. Go to your mat, lay down, stay, move away, come back, food reward. The dog will break as soon as you food reward them. And then you're like, no, go to your mat, stay, and then you leave. And they're like, oh, The game is staying on the mat, not going to the mat and breaking, going into the mat and breaking. So this premise is universal and you can use it anywhere, but just be mindful. If some dogs are partaking in some behavior, you're like, why is this not getting better? Like, I'm doing all the things. Check. Be like, am I rewarding a cycle I don't like? Oh, I am too, because it jumped up and I said get down. Because another example is like furniture. Dog jumps up on the couch. The person's like, hey, get off. They get off. They're good puppy. You're such a sweetie. And then the dog starts to learn, hey, if I want your attention, I should jump on the couch. And then you'll kind of get rough for a second verbally and say, get off. And then I'll get off and then you give me all your attention. So you're going to get more jumping on the couch, not less. But this is a premise for any kind of behavior, okay? Does anyone have any questions about that? Just subtle tweaks. Anyway, subtle stress signs is the next thing, okay? I'm saying all these things in a certain order on purpose because I'm trying to just build up the house, if you will, okay? So subtle stress signs is like a second story of your house. Now, there's loud kind of stress signs, there's subtle ones. Does anyone have any inkling of what some loud stress signs may be? Just say it out loud.
So just like walking around, barking at like anything and everything, just to like.
Sure. Could be barking, yep. Any other guesses?
Heavily panting.
That would be more of a subtle stress sign. I would personally categorize it, but that's a good guess. So we'll set that one to the other side of that column for now. Anyone else?
So like kind of like looking around, like constantly trying to like.
It's pretty subtle. Good guess. I'll just tell you guys. So more of what I would categorize as like loud stress signs is like growling, hackles are up, showing teeth. You know, everyone knows those. They're like, oh, something's wrong, barking, okay? But subtle stress signs are more of those quieter indicators that you guys mentioned, right? You know, panting. Everything's context-based though, okay? So be mindful. You know, if the dog just ran 10 laps and it's panting, you're like, well, yeah, that lines up. It's hot. Or if the dog's drooling a lot and you've got some snacks that you're passing around, like, yeah, that makes sense. But if there's no food around and the dog's excessively drooling and it's in a crate and you're like, oh, it's a new dog. Has it ever been crated before? Well, maybe not. I don't know. But like that's probably more of a subtle stress sign. You guys have any other guesses of other subtle stress signs?
Stress yawning.
Yawning, yep.
Shedding.
That can be one for sure.
Hiding in the corner.
Yeah, so avoidance, sure, yep. And pacing, yep, for sure. Those are all really good ones. Any other ones that you can think of?
Like licking the nose.
Yeah, like a tongue flick. Yeah, so depends on the dog. Sometimes it can be like just a little, or sometimes it can come out a lot more. But just be mindful with that because once again, it's context. I've known dogs that are getting like affection and they're like leaning into you and backing it up and their tongue's going in and out. So it's not a stress sign in that context. But then I've also seen another dog being like super rigid, right? Any other guesses? I just said one.
Rigid body.
Yeah. Rigidity. Why does this dog look so stiff? Well, if it's stiff physically, it's probably mentally rigid as well. And when you're mentally rigid, you're probably not that fun to be around. So that's a really good indicator. Any more?
Ears back.
Pardon?
Ears back.
It can be, for sure. It's all relative, like I said. But yeah, for sure that can be an indicator. No more?
Glazed eyes. The way their
Like
eyes look.
pupils dilated? Or like, do you mean like they're reddish or both?
Like glazed, honestly.
Like they look like they're stoned?
Kind of, I guess. Not really. I don't know how to explain it.
Dilated
Like
pupils? Like,
My pup, when she gets really stressed, her eyes look almost like watery and like glassy.
okay. Yeah, so glossy and glassy, that sounds good, yeah. Dilated pupils is one too. Any others? There's a couple left. I can just tell you them too. I was just trying to make it interactive so I wasn't boring. Like, meh, meh, meh. Okay, so there is, trying to cross-reference what you guys said versus what's left. One of them is evading. It's kind of along the lines of the avoidance that you mentioned. But more specifically, it isn't necessarily. Think of like kids playing with dogs, and this can happen in your facility for sure. Is like, but with dogs, not a kid. But pretend you're at a family function and there's a dog in there, and there's 3 5-year-olds chasing the dog, and they're running after it, and everyone's having fun. It's super playful, but the dog's body language is like, and he's rigid and kind of trotting, and the tail might be like not high and soft and wavy, maybe mid-level or low, but stiff, and they're just kind of trotting. I'm like, that's a recipe for nothing good. And I'd be personally interrupting the children, be like, hey guys, why don't you go, let's do something. Let's go play basketball. That dog is trying to evade. But the same thing can happen in a play group with other dogs, where dog A is trying to flee all of them because it's spooked, but it would be faster because dogs are faster, kids are slow, like in comparison. It might all be happening a lot faster, but dog A looks like it's prey, and dog B, C, D, E, F are all chasing it. And then when it gets caught, it's going to be like, ah. So I might advocate as soon as I start to see them putting the chase on that dog and it turning into like a prey predator scenario, depending on how well I know the group. Like if you know it's going to fizzle down and they know how to self-regulate, then it's fine. But lots of times when you have younger dogs, they don't self-regulate well, and you have to essentially referee. There's the whale eye, moon eye, side eye, same eye. It's the same, all mean the same thing, but it's where like the dog is rigid and they're staring at the stimulus, whether it's a kid or a cat or a dog, and you can see the whites of the opposing side. That's the worst. That one's going to escalate typically within 1 to 3 seconds. So if you see that, it's like, hey, whistle, whatever. And so just so everyone's like, huh? And stop so you can try to intervene. So if I ever see that at private sessions, which I have, like I'm not hesitating at all to see where it goes. Because you have to know, well, I'm going to try to help you understand if you don't know, is that when you see whale eye, if the entity, the stimulus with the dog that's giving the whale eye does anything, it's going to escalate. The only way it's not going to escalate is if they stay still and the dog giving the whale eye walks away. So I'm like, oh, this dog is like young and it's all flirty and goofy and oblivious that this dog is like, you better stop or you're going to get hurt. So I'm like, as soon as I see it, I'm yelling and I'm trying to get in between like a wedge and referee them, like blowing the whistle when 2 guys are going to get spicy. Because the young dog doesn't know your only job is to stay still until they stop giving you those eyes and walk away from you. If you walk away, that dog will attack you. If you move towards, that dog will attack you. So, and just as a heads up, if you ever get confronted with an intense dog, probably outside of these walls, not in them, stay still if they're giving you whale eye. Because they will wait till they walk away. Because I've entered thousands of homes where dogs are like, hey, I'll bite you if you don't come in here. And I'm like, copy that, but I'm not leaving. And I wait, I have my bag in between us. I'm like, if you're gonna bite something, it's gonna be in my bag, so fair enough. And then they walk away and then I can go in. Because sometimes people, why are you waiting at the door for so long? Not because your dog's threatening me. And I trust them. Well, I'm not gonna get into a fight with them because I don't wanna get bit, but I'll win them over. Anyway. Side note, not as relevant, but if you are into a situation with a really spicy dog, they tend to bite whatever's closest to them. So that's why I had my bag in between. Or if I was confronted with an off-leash dog that looked like it wanted to take a piece of me, I would just put anything in between me I could, whether that's a chair or my bag or something, because if they're gonna bite, they'll bite whatever's closest. Most don't just try to jump at your face. So that's a little side bonus.
If it's just you and the dog and you're like
Jiving?
just like on the bike path or something,
Okay.
and the dog approaches you.
You and your dog and another dog, or just yourself and a...
Both situations.
Okay.
Yeah. What like if and there was like you have nothing to put in between you, what would you suggest for that if you're with your dog and if you're by yourself without your dog and a dog approaches you? Like
Well, if you're riding your bike, it's actually the easiest.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and not because I'm using the bike, but because I can stop and leave my dog tethered to the bike. Like I could just like put the leash on the handlebars and then go deal with the off-leash dog, because my dog will get spooked if it starts moving towards us and dragging the bike behind it, and they'll just shut down, and then I can deal with the other dog. I'll condense it really quickly because it's more of like a 7-minute explanation. But essentially what I'm trying to do is, like, as soon as I see the off-leash dog coming towards us and I don't want it to come towards us because maybe my dog's in training and it has some issues, or I'm scared it's going to attack us or whatever, fill in the blank, and I want it to repel it, what I'll do is I'll use my voice. So I'll stop, I'll yell, hey, and move towards the dog 1 to 3 or 4 steps, and I'll stream that verbal yelling until they take their eyes off my dog and look up to me. And I'm like, don't come closer. Like, it doesn't matter what you say. But you're projecting like, I don't want nothing to do with you. But I have to escalate my voice and my posture a little bit enough so the dog takes its eyes off my dog and brings them up to me. Even if it's aggressive or even if it's friendly, I've done it with all of the dogs and it's worked like 97% accuracy if you do it in the right sequence. Now the subtle nuance to that is that you cannot back off until they turn around. So I say, hey, go, and then I stop, and then they stop, further, maybe 10, 15 feet away, and they're standing there like, don't turn around yet. You have to maintain until they walk away. You're basically doing whale eye, but louder. And you're like, stay away. And the dog's, ah, and then they think about it. And they start going like this, and they start walking away. So maintain. Don't turn around until they turn around. As soon as you start to turn around, because they left, if you go this way, look back, and if they start coming back, you repeat the first step. Hey, go. You take a few steps till they stop position, and you wait for them to go away. I've seen a dog like follow a lady down an entire block because she kept going, no, no, and it just kept following her. I felt bad, but I'm like, well, can't save everyone, so I got something to do. It was just a little dog following them. They weren't in danger, but I was like, sorry, lady, you're on your own. But that has been the most effective thing. You could use an air horn instead of your voice, but I always have my voice with me, and I can address it right away. And a male or female, you can do it. The height doesn't matter. I've had like a 5'2" female repel aggressive dogs away from her using the same technique. It's just those yelling really loud, streaming that like, ah, and then when they stop, you be quiet. As soon as they take a step towards you, you repeat. And you don't leave until they've turned around. And then you can go away. Because I used to have a super aggressive dog on leash when I was learning a lot of things. And I needed dogs to not come to us. Because she might attack them, and then I might have to pay someone to get them, get some treatment. As well, it's going to set my dog behind 1 to 3 months in her training. So I had to get really good at repelling them away with them being off-leash random dogs. Anyways, good question. Okay, I'll try to, I think that's mostly, one last thing, bite inhibition. Do you guys know what that is? Okay, bite inhibition is essentially something that's conditioned into dogs, and some not, where they develop a certain intensity of bite force. Okay, bite inhibition is typically learned in well-socialized dogs, most between 3 to 6 months. So, and it's through play with other dogs primarily, but they can also learn it from us, because mouthing humans, and humans don't like it. But we're really sensitive, so we usually don't teach the dogs a lot of bite inhibition because we don't want them mouths on our hands. So if a person doesn't socialize their dog and they really are punitive when the dog is mouthy with them, their dog might not develop bite inhibition, which means to inhibit their bite when things get spicy. So I've met numerous dogs throughout the years that things escalate and the dog gets into a battle. They are like sinking teeth into flesh, like they have no restraint. And that's the equivalent of a human where you have a disagreement with one of your team members, but you punch them in the face and then you try to attack them and like you put your hands on their throat. You're like, yeah, that would not be okay, right? That's a little much. But there's dogs out there that have no bite inhibition because they never got taught it. And are legitimate threats to other safety. But when you have dogs that have really good bite inhibition, because they were adequately socialized between 3 to 6 months and it kept up, their past is a super great indicator of if they're actually a threat or not. Because most of the time they're not. Like your fears might be subsided because if you're like, wait, like historically, this dog's been with us for a year, you know, in the last 3 months, something's gone astray and it's starting to get into some altercations, but it's never hurt anyone in a year, then statistically it's not going to, even with the further altercations. Now, I'm not saying just let it ride at all, but I'm just saying from a standpoint, if you just had a dog fight and you separated them, you're like, what do we do now? We got to isolate them. And it's like, well, you can, but that's not necessarily the best technique that's going to help them get through that issue. But your hesitation would be like, well, I don't want them to hurt each other. And I'm like, copy that. We're going to frame it in a certain way, but also remember, this dog has really good bite inhibition, even though it's having a challenge right now. It's never hurt a dog. It's never put a dog into a vet clinic. It's not statistically probable that it's going to hurt the other dog. Is it scary and you're concerned that it will? Yes. But if we have altercations between similar dogs in our facility, and every time it escalates, we just separate them and put them in separating kennels for a cool down, it's only a matter of time before they're going to get triggered in the same manner and they're going to fight again because it's unresolved. I'll give you an example. When me and my brother used to fight, because he's 2 years older than me, and I was usually the same size as him, just because he wasn't as large. And anyway, so we would battle, and my mom used to get sick of it, naturally. And when we'd fight, she'd make us sit at the table together. And so you guys are going to sit here until you make up, and you're going to give each other a hug, and then you can go. Whereas if she would have been like, no, stop fighting, and then we both dispersed to our rooms, guess what we're doing for the next 30 minutes or 2 weeks? Ruminating. I hate him. He's such a fill in the blank. But when we're sitting at the table, I still feel those feelings, staring at him. But I'm like, I really want to go play video games. I really want to go ride my skateboard, or whatever, right? And I'm like, okay, fine. Okay, fine. And then we shake hands, hug it out, and then it's done. So it's kind of like that, of something to consider, that when we do have bouts of intensity or aggression or fights, if it's safe to do so and no one actually got hurt with the pre-fight, is that as soon as we can, we want to bring them back to the space together and keep them close. But anyways, there's a specific process for that. And I might just verbalize it right now because I won't be able to probably say it if we're in the group because the dogs will be barking. And you can take it or leave it, but my experience has been like 90% of daycare facilities tend to do the same thing. Dogs fight, we have a cool down, we separate them by whatever means that is, and then they go into their respective areas. We wait 15 minutes, 20 minutes, half an hour, and then we bring them back out. And that's okay. But like by definition, it's a management protocol, which just means you're stopping that particular incident from happening any further or worse in that moment. But it would not prevent another fight between those same dogs under a similar circumstance. So my question is like, well, why did it happen? Well, because one of our handlers is too handsy with all the dogs and is a resource in the dog's eyes. And dog A got mad that dog B came to get some affection when it was in your bubble, because you're my human. And then it escalates. So I'm like, well, what happened? So in the future, when that happens again, it's not an if, those two dogs will have another fight because we never addressed the root cause of what began it, okay? So I want to be mindful, like anytime we see those battles, well, what happened? Well, maybe it was that. And then if I just remove them, I can't reset it, so to speak. So what I might do instead is let's pretend I'm the stimuli that the dog is possessive over. So I've got dog A here, gets mad at dog B for walking by us because it's too close to that love bubble that I want to be in. And then what I'll do is I'll grab both of them. But it depends how you would have to physically collect them, because you guys don't have collars on when they play, right?
Yes, we do.
You do? Okay, that's easier then. So perfect. Because what I would do is I would like clap, hey, as soon as it starts to escalate, or whatever means you guys use to diffuse the issues, like the whistle or horn, and then, citronella or whatever that looks like. And as soon as they stop, you collar grab one dog, another team member collar grabs the other, and you guys are this far apart. And you guys are holding one hand, two hand, whatever, but you guys are staying here. Like my mom getting me and my brother to sit at the table. You're like, no, you guys are going to calm down because I guarantee this will happen. And this is not theory. Like I've done this many times. Both of them will calm down within 1 to 3 minutes. And then they'll start to go looking the other way. Like, can we just play again? Like me and my brother want to be like, can I just go play some video games? Well, be nice. Because then the hard step comes. Both dogs calm down. You get to calm down internally because you're going to naturally be impacted by fights. You should. If you're not, then that's bigger issues I can't help with. So it's going to be a lot of energy for you too, and you're naturally going to want to flee from that, meaning put the dogs in the crates and then take a breather like, oh, that was an intense one. So, but we need to destabilize that cycle. And I can do that by collar grabbing, holding them right here, waiting. You might need a third team member to keep the other dogs away from you, or whatever that would look like. Them pen you up with some crates that are around, because you could be in a kind of a little bit of an enclosure like that. Something, you could find a way. But then once they both calm down and then they both lay down, you just keep collar grabbing. I'm not saying anything. I'm not telling them to sit. I'm not trying to force them to down. I'm just stabilizing them. Because something I will tell you that I've learned from experience is still the body, still the mind. So if you get them to physically stop moving, you can calm them down internally as well. So that's what happens. They calm down by default, 1 to 3 minutes, maybe sometimes 5, and then they both lay down. And then guess what you do? Any guesses?
Let them go.
Yeah. What are you going to do? And then if they fight again, you do the same thing. Typically they don't. Maybe once. I've done this, I don't know, more times than I can count. And they always just tend to go shake it off, and then they walk away and go play with someone else. And then it's done. But also I got to be mindful in that 5 minutes, kind of taking inventory. I'm sitting there anyways. I'm like, whoa, what happened? Oh, you know what? I don't know. Dynaco walked by, and Jane didn't like it. I think maybe she was being possessive of my attention, or my personal space, or that toy, or that other dog, because they can be possessive of like, this my puppy. Nobody could touch it. Okay, stuff like that. Anyways, I could go on at length, and I know there's time constraints, so I'll have to just stop it there. But do you guys have any questions about that specifically before?
Yeah, in the event that you're the only person in the room, should you call someone in to do this?
Yeah,
Or,
I would get backup for sure. Do you guys have like some kind of a sound you use, or do you have intercoms that you say?
We call that if we need
Okay.
to.
Yeah. So then you just get some help. So because like I've done it many times by myself where I've got a dog in each arm, but I mean I got quite a wingspan, so not everyone has that necessarily. But as well, there's not typically another 10 dogs running around as well.
Yeah, I had to do that once in the morning and it wasn't very fun.
For
so-
sure. I would be like, yeah, get some backup.
When do you draw the line between being able to reset them like that and it was actually too far to where they actually, you don't think they can be reset that way? Like, is there a point where they're too amped up or it was too much of a scuffle for them to reset like that?
For sure. So it would depend. Like, it can be, you're like, oh, we did a one reset and it got really bad and I feel like this is trending the other way. Just have a cool down. Just put them away. But like, for me, it's kind of difficult to explain, but what I usually see the misstep is that the team is not advocating for the dogs in real time fast enough. So this issue is building over hours. And then it's like there's nothing left. And think of like when my 9-year-old has a tantrum because I asked him to not swear in the street because there's neighbor kids out there because he's mad at the other kid, then I'm the bad guy. Well, no, my son had a really rough day, but he was at the point of no return. Even though I'm just like, buddy, you can't swear. I understand that you guys got in a fight. Just come inside. It's not me. So yes, if you perhaps missed the warning signs throughout the day. But typically in my experience, when you're more attuned to those subtle stress signs and you're advocating, they don't get, those incidences don't get as amped up and don't last as long. Because I did the same training with another facility, I don't know, 2 years ago, and they're like, what they referred to as chaos. They didn't realize how much chaos was in their daycare until they started implementing this stuff, and they're like, oh my God, this is like chill. Would never expect it because they're so much more astute of the lower levels of issues and dealing with them than before it's a fight. But I mean, good question. When in doubt, you do it 2 or 3 times, resets, and they keep going at it. You're like, okay, well, this is going to have to stop. We need some outside intervention, and that's totally fine. Any other questions?